was 25 when this happened. I just landed a job as a junior graphic designer at a small marketing firm in Brooklyn. The pay was decent and the people were chill, but the hours were rough, especially during deadline weeks. That night was one of those late ones. It was close to 11:30 by the time I packed up and headed to the subway. I was used to the ride home. I took the G to the L and then transferred to the 6. It wasn't short, but it was familiar. I always carried pepper spray, kept my headphones low, and tried not to look too distracted. Just the basics of being a woman in the city. I guess I felt confident I could handle myself. That changed after this night. The station was nearly empty when I got there. Just a couple sitting close together on the bench and an MTA worker mopping the floor, earbuds in. The platform lights flickered once, which wasn't unusual, but still gave me a weird vibe. When the G train finally pulled in, I got in one of the middle cars. I usually sat near the door, kept my back to the corner so I could see everyone. I don't like surprises. At first, the car was almost empty, just me, a guy in a hoodie at the far end, and a woman who looked half asleep with shopping bags around her feet. I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through my texts. I remember thinking how quiet it was, not just calm, but weirdly still. No music, no talking, just the hum of the train and the occasional rattle when we hit a curve. A couple stops later, the woman with the bags got off. Hoodie guy stayed. I noticed that when I looked up, he was sitting a little closer than before. Still far, maybe 4 or 5 seats down, but enough that I noticed. I brushed it off. Maybe he just wanted a better spot. But something about him felt off. He hadn't moved much, just shifted down the aisle a bit. No phone in his hands, no book, just staring out the window, even though we were in a tunnel. I went back to my phone but kept checking the reflection in the glass across from me. I caught him glancing my way once, then quickly turning back toward the window. My stomach tightened a little. I reminded myself not to jump to conclusions. Maybe he was just tired. Maybe he was high. But then the train stopped again. Nobody got on. But when we lurched forward, he had moved again. Now he was just 2 seats away. I felt it then, that deep, primal alertness. Like my body had figured out something before my brain could. I tried to act casual, shifting in my seat, pretending to look for something in my bag, but I was watching him in the reflection. He wasn't staring at me exactly, but he wasn't not staring either. His body was angled just enough in my direction. And worse, he was murmuring to himself. Lips moving. No sound I could make out, but definitely whispering. That's when I gripped my pepper spray. I kept it in an outer pocket of my bag for easy reach. I slid my fingers around it and just sat there, trying to stay calm. We had 3 more stops before my transfer. I considered getting off early, but I'd be alone on a dark platform, and I didn't know if that was any better. Then he got up, just like that. Slow, deliberate. And he walked across the aisle to sit directly across from me. He didn't say anything when he sat down, just stared at me with this blank look, not angry, not crazy, just empty. His hands were resting on his knees, fingers twitching slightly like he was trying to hold something in. I kept my head down, pretending to read something on my phone, but my heart was pounding so loud I was sure he could hear it. The weirdest part, nobody else got on for the next 2 stops. It was just me and him in that car. I thought about moving to a different car, but to do that, I'd have to stand up, walk past him, and open the door between the cars, something I'd always been told not to do unless it was an emergency. This felt like one, but I was frozen. I kept thinking, what if standing up makes him react? What if he follows? Then he leaned forward slightly, just a little, enough to make my skin crawl, and he whispered something. At first I didn't catch it. I looked up, and he repeated it, barely audible over the rumble of the train. "You smell like soap," he said. That was it. Just those words. I felt cold all over. I didn't know what that meant, if it meant anything at all. But it felt so personal, so specific. My throat was dry. I said nothing, just clutched my bag tighter. The next station was my transfer. As soon as the train slowed, I stood up, ready to bolt. I didn't even look at him. I just moved fast, out the doors the second they opened. The platform was empty. I booked it up the stairs, then stopped, hiding behind one of the pillars to see if he followed. He did. A few seconds later, he came through the turnstile at the end of the platform, looking around slowly. Not running, just scanning, like he had time. I ducked low and crept toward the emergency exit, slipping out and sprinting up to street level. My apartment was 6 blocks away. I ran the whole thing, hard in my throat, checking over my shoulder every 20 steps. I didn't see him. I got inside my building, up the stairs, and slammed my door shut behind me. Locked it, chained it, deadbolted it. Then I just stood there, listening. Nothing. Eventually, I made myself go to bed. I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the floorboards upstairs, every car passing outside, I jumped. The next day, I told myself it was over. Just a creepy guy. A bad night. It happens in the city. But then, a week later, I found something. It was early. I was leaving for work. I opened my apartment door and nearly stepped on a piece of paper folded in half on the mat. I figured it was a flyer or a pizza menu. I picked it up and opened it. It was a subway ticket. Not just any ticket. It was for the exact same time and route I had taken that night. My train, my car. There was no note, no name, nothing. I froze. My fingers went numb. I looked down the hallway, the stairs, the street outside. I don't even know what I was hoping to see. Maybe someone I could explain this to. But there was nobody. Just silence. Same as that train car. I didn't take the subway after that. Not for months. I took cabs, Ubers, even walked home some nights. Anything but the train. And even now, years later, if I hear a man whispering on the subway or someone sits too close, I get that same chill, that same feeling in my gut, and I still wonder, how did he know where I lived? Or worse, was that really the first time he saw me? I was 27 when this happened. I had just finished a freelance gig in Prague and was heading to Munich for a few days before flying home to the US. I've always liked trains more than planes, something about the quiet movement, the views, the rhythm of the tracks. It felt like I could actually think. I booked an overnight train. Nothing fancy, just one of those solo compartments with a bunk and a door that locks from the inside. It wasn't luxury, but it beat sleeping upright next to a stranger in coach. I boarded around 9 p.m. The station was quiet, half lit, and cold, the kind of cold that gets into your sleeves. Most people were already in their cabins. I found mine, car 17, cabin B, and settled in. The bed had a thin comforter. There was a little shelf for my backpack and a window with a sliding curtain. Basic, but fine. I locked the door, kicked off my shoes, and lay back with a podcast playing low in one ear. The first hour was peaceful. Occasionally, I heard footsteps in the hallway, the sound of doors sliding open or closing. Nothing weird, just people getting settled. Then, maybe around 10:45, I paused the podcast to stretch and noticed something. A soft knock. Not on my door, on one of the cabins farther down the hall. Then another knock, slower, heavier, like someone wasn't sure which door to try. I sat up and peeked through the peephole in my door. The hallway light was dim, but I could make out the shape of a man, mid-40s maybe, wearing a dark coat, just standing a few cabins down. Not moving, He wasn't near the bathrooms, not looking at his phone, just standing there. At first I figured he was drunk or got on the wrong car. Maybe his ticket was for a different cabin and he was confused. That happens, right? A few minutes later, I lay back down, locked the door again just in case, and tried to get comfortable. But the next time I glanced up, I noticed the handle on my door twitch. Just once. It was fast, almost nothing. A quiet click, like someone was trying it very gently. My whole body tensed. I didn't move. I just stared at the handle. I thought, maybe the train shifted. Maybe the latch just didn't catch right. Then I heard footsteps again. Slow, pacing back and forth outside, not going anywhere, just walking the same stretch of hall, like someone who didn't have a cabin, or didn't want to be in theirs. I turned off the light inside my cabin so I could see better out the peephole. The man had moved. He was standing closer now, right across from my door, facing it, not doing anything, just standing. And something about how still he was. It didn't feel like confusion anymore. It felt deliberate. I stayed still, barely breathing, just watching him through the peephole. His head was slightly tilted down, like he was looking at the floor, or maybe listening. Every so often his fingers twitched at his sides, like he wanted to move, but didn't know what to do. I didn't recognize him. He wasn't one of the people I'd seen boarding earlier, and his coat didn't look like something you'd wear on a trip. It was more like something someone pulled out of a closet after years. Faded. Stiff. I didn't want to overreact. Maybe he really was just lost, and standing in the hallway because he didn't want to wake someone by knocking again. But then he turned, and I heard him try another door. This time I could hear the metal rattle a bit louder. A second later, footsteps again, 2 cabins down, then another handle jiggle. He was checking doors. Quietly, like he was trying not to wake anyone. My cabin had a bolt lock, and I checked it again without making noise. Still secure, still holding. But now my heart was pounding. I sat there in the dark, hands gripping the edge of the bunk, trying to think, should I call the train attendant? I hadn't seen one since we left the station. There wasn't any kind of call button in the room either. I didn't have Wi-Fi, and the signal was almost gone. Eventually, the footsteps faded. I waited, maybe 10 minutes, maybe more. Long enough that I started to believe it was over, that he had figured out where he was supposed to be. I even let myself relax enough to lie back down. But around 1 a.m., I woke up to a new sound. A scraping. Not loud, not obvious. But it was right outside my cabin door, like something sliding slowly along the bottom of it. Back and forth. I sat up, hard in my throat. I didn't even try to look through the peephole this time. I just listened. The scraping stopped. Then another sound. A breath. I swear I could hear someone breathing just outside. Shallow and slow, like they were crouched down. I grabbed the only thing I had near me that could be used as a weapon, a metal water bottle, and stood there frozen, watching the door. I whispered under my breath, "Just go away, man. Please go." After what felt like forever, I heard footsteps again, this time going away. The door to the next car clicked. Silence. I didn't sleep for the rest of the ride. I sat there in the dark, waiting for morning. When we pulled into Munich, I got off as soon as the doors opened. I stood on the platform watching people walk past, hoping I'd see the guy, hoping he looked normal. Harmless, just another tired traveler. But I never saw him. Later, when I told the train attendant what happened, he just frowned and said, "No one reported a missing cabin. No passenger was supposed to be walking around that late, and no one matching my description ever came to claim a seat in car 17. I don't know what that man was doing. I don't know if he was just unstable, or looking for someone who forgot to lock their door. But what gets me is this. When I checked the lock that morning, after everything, It was still turned, but the bolt wasn't fully in the latch. It had been moved, almost unlatched. I keep thinking about how close he might have come, and what would have happened if I hadn't woken up. I work as a freelance photographer, mostly for local papers and real estate listings, but sometimes I do passion projects on the side, stuff that keeps me creatively sane. Last fall, I got obsessed with documenting abandoned places around Michigan, crumbling barns, broken down diners, shuttered bowling alleys. They had this quiet sadness that translated really well in photos. One spot had been on my list for a while, an old rail yard just outside of Lansing. It was half forgotten, tucked behind a stretch of woods near a defunct warehouse park. I'd seen it mentioned in a Reddit thread about urban exploration. Most people wrote it off as too overgrown or not worth the hike. But a few mentioned the graveyard cars, rows of rusted-out train coaches just sitting there, hidden by trees, untouched for years. That was exactly the kind of thing I was looking for. I mentioned it to one of my friends, Jay, but he had zero interest in hiking through brambles just to maybe get tetanus from a steel panel. So I went alone. I parked my car off a side road around 4 p.m., stuffed my gear into a backpack, camera, flashlight, gloves, and followed a narrow trail into the woods. It was cooler than I expected for early October, but the trees were full of color, and I figured I had maybe 2 hours before sunset. The rail yard was farther out than I thought, maybe 25 minutes of walking. When I found it, it wasn't much to look at first. Rusted chain-link fencing that had fallen in places. Gravel overrun with weeds. But once I got closer, I saw the trains, maybe 6 or 7 of them, just sitting there like ghost ships. Some were cargo cars, others were older passenger coaches with shattered windows and doors barely hanging on. I started with wide shots from the outside, walking the line and adjusting angles. After maybe 15 minutes, I climbed into the first coach. The floor creaked under my boots, and the air inside was stale, damp, with a weird oily smell that stuck in my throat. Seats were ripped, moss-covered parts of the carpet, and everything had this soft layer of grime like it hadn't been touched in decades. As I moved to the second car, I felt a little more on edge. Not scared, just hyper-aware, like someone might yell at me for trespassing, even though I was positive no one cared about this place anymore. Still, I kept glancing behind me. The third car was the strangest. It was sealed tighter than the others, no broken windows, no tags or graffiti. The door stuck, and I had to put my shoulder into it. It scraped open with a groan loud enough to make birds scatter outside. Inside, it was darker. The windows were tinted, and the air felt heavier. That's when I noticed something weird. There was a sleeping bag near the back, not old and shredded like the trash in the other coaches. This one looked recent, newer. Next to it was a can of beans, unopened. No dust on it, just sitting there like someone had left in a hurry, or hadn't left at all. I felt that little chill behind my neck. My first thought wasn't ghosts or anything like that. It was, someone's living here. I raised my camera and took a few fast shots. My fingers were twitchy. I didn't want to hang around too long. That's when I heard the click. It was soft, but unmistakable. A small metallic snap, like a latch or a step shifting under weight. It came from the far end of the car, the part where the conductor's section used to be. I froze, listening. I tried to tell myself it was just the train settling, just metal shifting with the cold. But then I heard breathing, not mine. It was faint, but I swear I could hear it. A slow, steady exhale coming from the conductor's compartment at the far end of the train car. I didn't move. My flashlight was still in my bag, and the only light was a hazy yellow spilling through the dirty windows. My eyes tried to adjust, but I couldn't see much past the rows of busted seats. That breathing, it wasn't loud, but it was wrong. Too slow, too deliberate, not like someone asleep, more like someone holding their breath and letting it out carefully, like they knew I was there. I backed up slowly, one foot behind the other, eyes locked on the dark space ahead. I didn't want to turn my back. I didn't want to break the silence. Another sound, this time closer. A low scrape against the floor, like a shoe or a hand shifting slightly. That was it. I turned, moved fast toward the door. My shoulder hit it hard. It didn't budge at first, and for one terrifying second I thought I'd gotten myself locked inside. I slammed into it again, and the latch gave way, the door jolting open just enough for me to slip through. I jumped down to the gravel, breath coming fast, hands trembling. I looked around. The woods were still quiet. The wind had picked up a little, rustling leaves overhead, but otherwise nothing. No one. Still, I felt it in my gut. Whoever or whatever had been in that car hadn't stayed behind. I didn't hear footsteps. I didn't see anyone. But as I made my way back toward the trail, I couldn't shake the feeling I wasn't alone. I didn't run. I didn't want to. I thought if I ran, I'd hear someone running behind me, and I honestly didn't know if I could handle that. The hike back felt like it took twice as long. Every branch snap, every shift of wind made me flinch. Once I got to my car, I slammed the door shut and locked it immediately. I sat there for a few seconds, just breathing, listening. Nothing. I didn't call anyone, didn't post about it. I honestly didn't even look at the photos until 2 days later. Most of the shots were typical, decay, shadows, colors. But one stuck out. It was from inside the sealed train car, aimed toward the back where the sleeping bag had been. The frame caught the whole aisle, perfectly lined up. And in the conductor's doorway, just barely visible, was something that didn't belong. Not a person, not clearly, but a shape, kneeling, watching, just outside the range of where my eyes had been focused. I deleted the photo right away. I wish I could say that was the end of it. But for a few weeks after, I had this awful pattern of waking up between 2 and 3 a.m. Always the same way, suddenly, with my heart racing, like I'd heard something just before I opened my eyes. A scrape, a groan, breathing, like metal shifting. I haven't gone back. I don't think I ever will, because there's one thought I can't shake, no matter how much time passes. That train car was supposed to be abandoned, but someone was living in there, and maybe they still are. Or worse, maybe they saw me and decided to follow. I work a pretty normal office job, graphic designer at a mid-sized tech company in Chicago. I live alone in a one-bedroom apartment in the North Side and take the commuter train to and from work every day. It's not glamorous, but I've got my routine. Morning coffee, earbuds in, same train car, same seat when I can get it. It's the kind of rhythm that feels safe, especially when you're just trying to get through the day. This happened on a Wednesday last fall. I remember because it had just started getting darker earlier, and that always throws me off. I caught the 6:45 p.m. train out of the loop like I usually do. The platform was crowded like always, but once we were a few stops in, it cleared out enough for me to grab a seat. I was halfway through a podcast, zoned out, watching the window reflections more than anything, when I noticed a guy get on at one of the less busy stops. He was tall, maybe early 40s, wearing a plain gray hoodie with the hood up and a heavy backpack. At first, nothing seemed weird about him. He just looked like someone coming home from work, or maybe from the gym. But then I noticed he didn't sit down. The car had plenty of open seats, but he stayed standing near the doors, facing my direction, not looking at me directly, just facing me. That sort of neutral, empty posture that's hard to read. I tried to brush it off. People do weird stuff on public transit all the time. I put my attention back into my podcast and avoided making eye contact. A few minutes passed, and I glanced up again. He was still there, still standing, still facing me. Not holding onto the rail, not moving, just planted in place, eyes on the wall behind me, not blinking much. At that point, I started to feel uncomfortable. I kept telling myself it was nothing. Maybe he was just tired. Maybe he had a short ride and didn't want to bother sitting down. I switched train cars at the next stop, not because I was scared, at least that's what I told myself, but because I didn't want to be weirded out the whole ride home. I moved 2 cars up and found another seat. I figured that would be it. But it wasn't. 2 stops later, I felt that subtle shift. The quiet creak of the door opening behind me. I looked up from my phone and saw him. The same gray hoodie, same backpack, same blank face. He walked in slowly, scanned the car, and again, didn't sit. He just stood in the exact same position, facing me. I felt my stomach drop. There was no way it was a coincidence. There were too many train cars, too many seats. He had followed me. I didn't want to overreact, didn't want to create a scene, but my brain was already running through worst-case scenarios. Was he armed? Was he unstable? Was he just messing with me? I kept my eyes on my phone, pretending I hadn't noticed him, but inside I was on full alert. My heart was pounding, and my hands felt clammy. I decided to stay calm. 2 more stops, and I'd be at my transfer station. I'd get off, blend into the crowd, and lose him. Easy. When the train slowed at the next stop, I stood up quickly and got off with a handful of other commuters. I moved fast, ducking down the platform like I was heading to the bus terminal, then circled around a pillar and doubled back toward the stairs leading up to the street. I didn't look behind me until I was halfway up. He was there, not rushing, not running, just calmly walking the same path I'd taken, maybe 30 feet behind me. Still no expression on his face. I pushed through the turnstile and walked faster, cutting across the sidewalk toward a 24-hour diner on the corner. The place had bright lights and people. I figured if I was being paranoid, at least I could sit with a coffee and wait it out. If he didn't show, great. If he did, I'd be surrounded. I sat by the window, ordered a coffee, and pulled out my phone to pretend I was scrolling. A few minutes passed. I checked outside. No sign of him. I waited 10 more. Still nothing. I thought maybe he'd gotten bored. Maybe he hadn't been following me at all. Maybe it really had been just some weird fluke. But when I finally left the diner, I didn't go straight home. I took a different street, walked a longer loop, checked over my shoulder more than once. It was clear. When I reached my building, I used the side entrance, which locks behind you. I live on the 3rd floor, and there's a small window near the stairwell that overlooks the street. I couldn't help myself. I looked. There he was, standing under the street lamp across from my building. Not moving, not on his phone, not pacing, just standing and staring at my apartment. I ducked away from the window, heart racing. I didn't sleep much that night. I kept checking the peephole, double-checked the L-locks, left a light on in the kitchen. The next day, I reported it to the building manager and changed my route to work. I never saw him again. But I still ride the train, and every time I get that same eerie feeling, like someone's watching me, I wonder, was he just passing through? Or was he waiting for the right moment?
If these stories sent a chill down your spine, go ahead and tap that like button and subscribe for more eerie tales. What would you do if you were caught in one of these unsettling situations? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd really love to hear what's on your mind. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next nightmare.